Hi, this is Chad, VP of Products at Slate Digital, and in this video we're going to take a look at a new module that we just released today for the virtual mix rack. Now this one was requested by a lot of you when we released the SDPE1 passive program EQ last year. A lot of you were like, oh, that's great, I've been waiting for that forever. But what about the solid state counterpart to the FG2A compressor? Now while that's a bit of a non sequitur request, it was still a good one. So we're going to take a look today at the new SD3A compressor. We're going to see how it's similar to the FG2A, but then look at how it's different and how it brings unique character to the palette of options in the virtual mix rack. So let's check it out. Now, before I start putting some audio through these things, it's worth taking a step back and just talking generally about what these types of compressors are. So the SD3A and the FG2A before it are both based on hardware compressors that actually share the same architectures. In fact, they share quite a lot of the same circuitry even, which is why they have the same set of controls on them. Now, these types of compressors are known as optical compressors. Now, it may sound weird because we're talking about audio right now, but the optical refers to how the system works inside. So actually, going on behind the panels, what happens is audio comes in, and that audio is used to light up a little electroluminescent panel, kind of like that blue glow that you would get behind an LCD display, that kind of light. And the louder the sound coming in, the brighter that panel gets. And there is a little light sensor pointed at that panel. And so when it picks up the light from the panel, it sends a signal to the output amplifier to turn the volume down. So if you follow that chain again, audio comes in, the louder it gets, the more the sensor sees, and the more it turns the output down. That's the compression, right? And so similarly, when the audio goes away and the light dims, the sensor doesn't see any light anymore, and that allows the audio level to come back up on the output. Now, you'll notice that there are no attack or release knobs on either the FG2A or the SD3A. And that's because there are no controls for that. The attack and release time are entirely dependent just on the natural behavior of those two components, the ability for that panel to light up and dim in response to the audio, but even more so, the ability for that sensor to respond to those changes in light. And it's kind of asymmetrical. It can respond very fast to when the light turns on. It can then quickly tell the amplifier to turn itself off, but it responds much more slowly to when the light goes away. That it actually has almost two stages of release. The first stage might come down after the first 150 milliseconds, and then it could take up to 5 seconds to get all the way back up to the original level. What's also interesting is that the timings of these two events, whether the light's coming on and it's trying to duck the volume, or whether the light went out and it's trying to let the volume come back up again, are program dependent, meaning that it depends on the type of sound coming into the compressor, whether it's transient or sustained, maybe it's bassy or very trebly, whatever it is, those are going to affect the attack and release times. And you end up getting a very musical and natural sounding compression that really complements and works with the sound that's coming through it. And as a result, it's very easy to use. You just have that one peak reduction knob, set it where it sounds good, move on. So what really makes these two things different then, in the case of the original hardware, that the one that the FG2A is based on used a tube amplifier on the output, but the SD3A is based on a system using a solid-state amplifier, so a transistor amplifier on the output. Now, this had a benefit back in the day of maybe having less noise, and some people think also that solid-state amplifier might be a bit more mid-forward in the mix. But I found that what distinguishes these more is the attack and release timings, the behaviors as you watch the needles move around responding to the same sounds. They are different, and so I find that actually has a greater impact on the colors and sounds that these things create. But we'll go through a number of examples here and compare them and see how this works, and so you'll know exactly which one to use in which case in your mixes. So let's get into it. Okay, so I've got a strip up here, and this is on drums. I'm going to go ahead and solo the drum part so we can take a listen to this. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that FG2A or SD3A is the right thing to use on drums, probably especially not on individual drums. But it kind of works here on the drum bus, which we're going to be hearing. But more than anything, this is just a good example that I think you'll be able to see and hopefully hear, especially if you're on your phone or something like that, before actually being able to try this yourself in your own music. Hopefully this difference will be obvious in the timings, and in order to understand that, pay attention to these meters as I go through this. Watch how much gain reduction each of these two compressors is applying to the same sound, right? I've got this set up right now that in snapshot A, we're just going to be hearing the SD3A, but then when I flip over to snapshot B, that's what engages the FG2A instead. And so we'll just be able to pop back and forth between these two and hear their various impacts on the drums. So let's start it out, and just so you know, the drums should be hitting right about -2 most of the time. I mean, some fills will happen and it'll compress a bit more, but when the snare starts wailing away in the main groove, you'll see it about -2, and then when the double kick stuff happens, it'll kind of get more to -3 because that gets a little louder. So just take a look here. Right? Between -2 or almost -2 and -3. That's just a nice small range, and it's keeping everything controlled. Now let's go over here and check out the FG2A. Now these are different devices. We measure different devices. They behave differently, so the knobs aren't set in the exact same place. You can't set the knobs in the same place and expect them to behave exactly the same way. But I've at least set the peak reduction that we should get about the same deflection off the meter here, and the gains are matched. So let's check this one out instead. So again, yeah, so you probably noticed there, now, one, the needle is moving around a lot more, right? So the attack and release are a little faster, especially the release portion of the FG2A. So after it tries to compress, it's trying to recover a lot faster than the SD3A does. But you also probably saw that when that double bass part happened, oh man, the gain reduction almost got up to -5 at one point, where the SD3A didn't go over -3. And as a result, that can kind of over-compress and cause the drums to disappear in the mix. So let's go ahead and add everything in here and take a listen to the SD3A. Switch. Yeah, see, that double bass stuff was a little bit lower in the mix when the FG2A was on versus the SD3A. That's again because it's just reacting so much faster. The SD3A seems a little more reserved, which is nice. In fact, I almost think the SD3A is like a limiter with a level writer combined to it. And that's part of the sort of memory effect of this optical pickup that is used in the compressor. Kind of once you've been compressing for a while, it sort of remembers that and then doesn't want to release so fast from there. So that, again, is part of the program-dependent behavior. When you just hit it with something fast, it will compress and then release very quick. But if you've been sitting there compressing for a while and then you stop, it kind of takes a moment longer now for it to finally release, kind of like saying, are you sure? Are you sure you're done? And so that can be nice as well when there's breaks, because it means the compressor won't be fully released by the time the drums come back in. So you don't get that first kind of shockingly loud hit as the compressor then catches back up again. But you'll be able to see that in your own music when you give this a shot. But let's try it on some other things here. I'm going to switch this back to A just so we have it in the right mode. But let's check out bass. So I've got a bass guitar here, and same thing. Got them both set up in 2 snapshots, and we'll listen to SD3A first. jump ahead here. Obviously not a strong compression on this one. Just trying to limit some of those louder notes that come along. Yeah, hitting -3 on those big hits there. All right, let's see what the FG2A does there. Yeah, catching more peaks. Yeah, so you can see it's a lot more dynamic. It's moving around. And when we mix that in with the music, it can make, again, the bass kind of disappear in certain cases when it compresses harder, or I think the bass sticks out a little better when the SD3A is used because of its stability. There you go. Yeah, I think that definitely works better in this case. And for one last example here, we'll take a look at it on the main guitars. So let me solo up the main guitars here. Whoop, and come back. And yeah, let's take a listen to the SD3A. And again, watch the meter. And now with FG2A. Yeah, so again, it's a lot more bouncing around. When we mix it in with the rest of the music, we should be able to hear if that is having a positive or negative impact. So here we are with FG2A. Check out the verse. Yeah, so whether or not it's that solid state amplifier that's in the SD3A or the timing differences, I can see why people say that the SD3A is a bit better in getting things to be a bit mid-forward in the mix. It could be a combination of both those factors and the timing differences, but it's definitely a different sound from the FG2A in spite of having all the same controls on both. So yeah, that is why we now have both of them in VMR. So I hope that gives you a better understanding of the differences between the SD3A and the FG2A. I know it can be hard sometimes with the audio compression from YouTube, making some of the details disappear in the audio. So if you really want to hear this and really feel how it's different on different components in the music, try it out in your own productions. You can do that today. If you are a subscriber to the Complete Access Bundle or All Access Pass subscriptions, you can launch Slate Digital Connect and download and install SD3A today. And then you can compare it against FG2A and everything else and really understand how it works. But if you're not yet a subscriber, that's totally cool. Head on over to slatedigital.com and you can sign up for the free trial for the Complete Access Bundle, which will give you access to the SD3A, the FG2A, plus all of the plugins in the virtual mix rack, plus all the additional Slate Digital plugins like Stellar Echo, Metatune, and Infinity EQ. Everything's included, as well as the plugins from SSL and Harrison Audio. Plus you get access to the Slate Sound Sample Library, the Academy educational videos, and the Virtue Assisted Mastering System. It's all included in this one subscription, so be sure to check it out. It's a great value. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.